Started for the Housing and Urban Development Continuum of Care Notice of Funding Opportunity for the fiscal year 24-25. This is a mandatory application orientation for both new and renewal applicants. We can head to the next slide. I'd like to introduce our two presenters for today. My name is Jesse Archer. I use he, him, his pronouns, CoC analyst with Sacramento Steps Forward. And then I'll pass it over to Rachel.
Hi, everyone. I'm Rachel Bereza, Deputy CEO at Sacramento Steps Forward. I use she, her pronouns. Thanks for joining us today.
Our objectives today is to learn a little bit about the purpose and background, both about your CoC and Sacramento Steps Forward. We'll dive into some details about the NOFO, and then we'll talk a little bit about the local process as well. For our agenda, we will do some welcomes and introductions. We'll go a little bit of background, like I said, about Sacramento Steps Forward and the CoC. We'll dive into the CoC details. We'll take a little break, then we'll jump into local process questions and answers. If folks can please place questions in the chat, that would be the most helpful. We will answer as many of them as we can today. And for questions that we don't get to, they will be placed on our website in the question and answers document. If folks can please introduce themselves in the chat, your name, pronouns, title, and agency, and one thing you'd like to get out of this meeting. We'll give folks just a minute to do that.
Hey, Jesse, it appears we can only message the co-hosts.
Oh, okay. Maybe I can have Jody check on that to see if people can post in the chat. But folks can feel free to message me or the right number.
I've just updated it. You should be able to do that now.
Thank you, Rachel. So folks should now have the option to message everyone in the meeting. For people that message directly to me, you're welcome to send that back in the chat if you would like. Awesome. Let's go ahead and jump to the next slide. All right, I will pass it over to Rachel.
Great. Thanks, everyone, and welcome again. I'm looking forward to running through this, the details of this NOFO with you today. So if you're not familiar, Sacramento Steps Forward is the lead agency of the Continuum of Care. And one of the new roles that we're stepping into this year is beyond just our role as the collaborative applicant, but also the facilitator of the CoC program competition for the 2024 to 2025 NOFO cycle. SSF will do our best to make sure that we have accurate information delivered to you in a very timely manner, and strictly adhere to our interpretation of the NOFO in the best way possible, in service to this community and beyond. So let's talk for just a moment about who Sacramento Steps Forward is. And if you're new to who we are and what we do, welcome to the space. And there are a couple of things that I just want to share quickly here. And the first is our vision. Our vision is to have an equitable community where everyone has a safe place to call home. And our current core services, which I'll outline in the next slide, fall under categories of leadership, system planning, coordinated entry, and fund and data management. Our mission is to end homelessness through leadership, convening partners, data-driven best practices, and improving system performance, which I hope you'll see thematically throughout our presentation today. And while this training is specifically for our HUD CoC providers, the trainings we produce are broadly intended to strengthen our community's capacity to address system-wide challenges in homeless response by partnering with and convening key stakeholders, coordinating service delivery, and administering fund and funding in HMIS. So here are the core services of what Sacramento Steps Forward is responsible for and the way that we show up in the world. We, specific to what we're doing today, lead community-wide planning and engagement, increase capacity and knowledge, manage funding and compliance. We collect, process, and share data. We also facilitate access to shelter, housing, and services. And then finally, but certainly not least, improving equity, fairness, efficiency, and effectiveness. If you'd like to learn more about Sacramento Steps Forward's core services, please go ahead and go to our website and you can dive deeper into some of those core services that we provide to the community. Let's talk about our role today. Sacramento Steps Forward is your collaborative applicant. And the collaborative, or sometimes as we refer to lead applicant, is the eligible applicant designated by the continuum of care to collect and submit very specific items. The first is the continuum of care registration. The second is the grants inventory worksheet. And then the third is the continuum of care consolidated application, which includes the application and the priority listing that we're talking about today. SSF will apply for CoC planning funds on behalf of the continuum of care during this competition. And the continuum of care may assign additional responsibilities to the collaborative applicant, so long as these responsibilities are documented in the governance charter, and the collaborative applicant must have the ongoing capacity to implement those responsibilities. And like I say, the big change this year is that many of you may have been familiar with our work in the past as an applicant, and you may have worked with a consultant as a third party. This year, the change is that SSF will also be the collaborative applicant as well as the facilitator. So let's talk about the Sacramento Continuum of Care. Who comprises the Sacramento Continuum of Care? That's really the city and the county of Sacramento, comprised of a board up to 32 members, which includes representation from local government, homeless services providers, partners with lived expertise, and the broader community of businesses, advocates, and faith-based groups. This slide gives a really nice overview of how we're situated in the community and all of the different parts that make up who we are as the CoC. And again, if you're interested in learning more about the CoC, I invite you to take a look at our website so that you can learn more about the different parts and pieces of who we are as a continuum of care. I'll hand it back to Jesse now.
Awesome. Thank you, Rachel. So we're going to dive a little bit at high-level details about the CoCNOFO. You can find out more details on our website. You can see the full list and the link to the NOFO there if you really want to dive into that. So there are two different types of projects. There are new and renewal projects. New projects are projects that have not previously received CoC funding, and renewal projects is a project that is seeking to renew its CoC funding. Eligible applicants, nonprofit organizations, state and local governments, public housing agencies, tribes, and tribally designated housing entities are the eligible applicants for this NOFO. There are two ways to engage with this directly. You can be a direct or sub-recipient. Direct recipient means you're working directly with HUD, and sub-recipient means that you are working with Sacramento Steps Forward and HUD on your application. Kind of what that means is, for a direct recipient is the agency receives funds directly from HUD, manages the grant internally, regular monitoring from HUD, does not share administrative funding. Subrecipients, the agency receives funding as a subrecipient of another agency, for example, Sacramento Steps Forward, grant administration support and compliance assistance from SSF, annual monitoring from recipient, regular monitoring from HUD, and a share of administrative funding. On the next slide is the same thing, but kind of more of a visual representation of what that looks like. So direct recipients, again, are working directly with HUD. Subrecipients are working with SSF, who is working with HUD as well. Projects must be serving individuals experiencing homelessness as defined by HUD. There's category 1, literal homelessness, category 4, fleeing or attempting to flee domestic violence. Certain project types are required to serve individuals experiencing chronic homeless, as defined by HUD. And then when we share this document as well, there's links in here where you can click and learn a little bit more about that and dive into that. But a homeless individual with a disability as defined by the McKinney-Vento Assistance Act lives in a place not meant for human habitation, safe haven, or in an emergency shelter, and has been homeless and living as described for at least 12 months. We can jump to the next slide. All projects must use coordinated entry as HUD says, but locally we call it coordinated access. So that is about accessing our system, getting an assessment, problem solving, prioritization, and referral. So again, you might hear us use coordinated entry as we're talking specifically about HUD, but here locally we use the term coordinated access. Eligible housing types. So there are 3 eligible housing types under this NOFO. There's permanent supportive housing, or PSH, housing assistance and supportive services without a time limit, rapid rehousing, or RRH, short-term housing up to 24 months and supportive services, joint transitional housing and rapid rehousing, or TH to RRH, 2 variations of short-term housing assistance up to 24 months and supportive services combined in a joint project. Note that this CoC funding cannot be used for emergency shelters or standalone transitional housing. A little bit about the eligible activities or costs. So this funding allows for acquisition, rehabilitation, new construction, leasing, rental assistance, supportive services, operating costs, HMIS, and project administration. So we are going to take a quick little break. Let me just check my notes real quick. Make sure I haven't missed anything. All right, anything else, Rachel, you want to touch on before we take a quick little break?
I think everything's good for me. Thanks, Jesse.
Okay, perfect. We'll be back in 5 minutes. All right, we are back and I'm going to pass it over to Rachel for our next part.
Great, thanks so much, Jesse. So now I'm going to talk about some of the changes that we've seen from our previous NOFO cycle. So the changes from 2023 at a high level is that there is a 2-year notification of funding opportunity issued for fiscal year 2024 to 2025. So this 2-year NOFO is inclusive of alternative procedures or requirements as necessary to allocate future appropriations for the second year for the award amounts made available for the Continuum of Care program. That means the application and selection and application process for FY 2024 funds will proceed much like it has in prior year competitions. COCs are only required to submit one COC application that will be applicable to both FY 2024, fiscal year 2024, and fiscal year 2025 funds. HUD does reserve the right to award available fiscal year 2025 funds based on this NOFO competition. And if new competitive funding becomes available for fiscal year 2025, this NOFO may be amended and the fiscal year 2025 or 2024 through 2025 COC application and score may be used for the application selection process. If the fiscal year 2025 appropriations are not able to fully fund all 2025 renewal grants, grant amounts may be reduced proportionately. This year, we've also seen changes to tiering. Tier 1 is set at 90% of the COC's annual renewal demand for this notice of funding opportunity. Additionally, there is a focus on building an effective workforce. There have been publications and key findings from industry leaders like the National Alliance to End Homelessness, who've provided a survey identifying low pay, high turnover, and lack of resources as core workforce challenges. So HUD has added a new homeless policy priority to the COC program competition NOFO for this year, recognizing these challenges and encouraging continuums of care to work with funders and stakeholders to improve pay and support for people who work in the homelessness sector. Finally, there is an allowance for a cost of living adjustment for conditionally selected grants. So HUD is authorized to make a reasonable cost of living adjustment for renewal amounts, which can help organizations afford increasing costs of operations due to inflation. So HUD will adjust amounts for the supportive services and HMIS costs budget lines for renewing projects based on the most recent 3-year average of changes in state quarterly census of employment and wages for the category social assistance.
Hi, Rachel. Are you able to take questions?
Yeah, I can take a question.
Perfect. David, you have your hand raised. Would you mind sharing?
Yeah, I was going to say, first of all, just to hear that HUD's thinking about a COLA just really made me smile from ear to ear. I mean, that's something that's going to be interesting to see. So I would assume that they do the calculations and then we're just notified ahead of time of what our grant will be increased to. Is that how that works?
That's correct.
Okay. And the second one, I'm just curious, what was the percentage of tier 1 in last year's? I know
It
it's
was
90% this year. What was it last year?
93% was last year.
So it'll capture more in tier 1 this year than last year, correct?
Correct.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Gotcha. Perfect. So yeah, that's great news. Thank you.
Good news all around.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks, David.
Is me correct, Rachel?
Yes, I'll hand it back to Jesse now. Thank you.
Awesome, thank you. So we'll talk a little bit more about the local process and competition. This is a two-part selection process. One, we will host the local competition. The selected applicants will then go to the national competition with HUD. So again, really we'll focus in on this local competition first over the next month or so, and then we will focus in kind of on that national competition after that. Next slide, please. The local competition, the goal of the local competition is to create a priority list, which you probably heard before earlier in the slides, that ranks all of our new and renewal project applications in order of community priority. The priority list is created by a non-conflicted review and rank panel, which we'll talk a little bit more later. Tier 1 is likely to be funded, and we just heard Rachel say that Tier 1 is now 90% of our annual renewal demand, which was 93 last year. And then Tier 2 is uncertain of funding. That's kind of where the CoC bonus funds come in, which are slated to be about $2 million for the Sacramento CoC of potential bonus funds. And then let me just say one more thing on our annual renewal demand. Our total annual renewal demand for the Sacramento CoC is about 34.3 million. For our YHDP, or our Youth Homelessness Demonstration Program grants, is about 2.9 million, and for our DV, or domestic violence programs, is about 4.6 million. The priority listing, to generate the priority listing, all applicants are required to submit a local application and then scored using locally developed scoring tools. I will say the caveat is some programs that are considered high performing or have served under 18 months of operating may be excluded, will be excluded from that additional application. You will find out if you are one of those programs within the next 24 hours, an email will be sent out. Renewal projects are scored on their performance over the past year, including things like client housing retention, any audit findings, and quality of services. New projects are scored on the application quality, readiness to start, demonstrated past performance with similar projects, and the ability to meet a prioritized need in the community. Talk a little bit about kind of the main highlights for renewal projects. So a review of the annual performance review data, which you will find out more information about your APRs in the next day. Attending the Mandatory Applicants Workshop, which is today. Submitting the supplemental questions and documentation, draft an eSNAPS application. As a reminder, like I just said, if you are a high-performing program or have under 18 months of operating, you do not have to submit the supplemental questions. Answer review and rank panel questions if needed, and submitting a project application in eSNAPS. For new projects, attend the Mandatory Applicants Workshop, here today. Submit a letter of intent, submit a project budget and supplemental questions, draft an eSNAPS application, attend a review and rank panel interview, and submit project application in eSNAPS. All right, I will pass it over to Rachel for review and rank.
Hi, Jesse. Actually, if we don't mind, quick question before we
yes.
switch up topics.
Mm-hmm.
Will SSF complete eSNAPS or will the applicant complete eSNAPS?
It depends if they're a direct or a subrecipient. So if they are a direct recipient, we will can help you through the process. If you have any questions, we can review your eSNAPS application, or we will review your eSNAPS application. If you are a subrecipient, we create those together, that application, and then SSF does the actual final submittal.
Thank you, Jesse.
Mm-hmm.
All right, I'll take it over from here. So I have the privilege of being directly involved with the review and rank process this year for our NOFO competition. And it really is a privilege because we take the factors that Jesse just described into consideration to be able to determine our tiered ranking, which Jesse alluded to earlier for Tier 1 and Tier 2 projects. Tier 1 projects are most likely to be funded, and any projects in Tier 2 are less likely to be funded. And we engage in this process with members of our project review committee. We also engage in this process with our partners with lived expertise committee, and they make up the rank and review panel who review and score the applications that come in to our NOFO competition for the year. There are several tools for ranking, which you can find on our website. The review and rank policies, as well as the renewal project scoring tool and the new project scoring tool. Those project scoring tools have both the threshold criteria as well as the scored elements listed on the tool itself. Diving in a little bit deeper, the renewal scoring tools will include the following factors. Threshold factors are considered pass-fail. So when you're looking at this, if it says not applicable, that's because you won't be able to get to the rank and review or review and rank process if those threshold factors are not met. The next scored criteria is housing performance, income performance, utilization performance, severity of need and service quality, compliance, community, enhancing capacity, and bonus factors. For new projects, the scoring tool looks slightly different. The same threshold factors exist, and that is a pass-fail. The next scoring criteria is housing, services, agency capacity, the prioritization option for new projects except for domestic violence bonus, or prioritization for domestic violence bonus, and community.
All right, we'll jump into a little some of the resources that are available for you on the SSF website and some that might be available tomorrow for you. So there are a whole host of different resources for you. So there's going to be the renewal project scoring tool and new project scoring tool, which Rachel just went over. Those are available on the SSF website. You can check them out now. It's a great opportunity to understand what is maybe different or new for you. Something that is very new this year for us is the community standards checklist. The community standards were adopted by the Sacramento CoC at the end of last year. These are community standards for all programs in Sacramento. We are asking that all applicants, new and renewal, do a self-assessment on how they are doing reaching those community standards. These community standards checklists will not be used in the review and rank process this year. It's more of an opportunity for you all to see where you're kind of falling with these and what areas are needed for improvement. But there is a place to upload that completed form on your application. The renewal and new application form will be on SSF's website tomorrow for your review. Both renew and renewal applications also have a checklist that is available on our website now, so you can know what are all the steps that you need to complete this process. There's a question and answer document that lives on SSF's website for NOFO specifically. That will be updated regularly as new questions come in. So if the questions that we get here today, we will be able to put them into that document and have an answer typed out as well. Questions that we don't get today, we will also answer those questions and post them there. If we get questions sent to us directly via email, we'll answer those and put them in the document as well. So if you have a question, that's a good place to go and check and see if there is an answer for you. There is the example budget, which I think would be particularly useful for new projects. It's the same budget that you would submit into eSNAPs, but just gives you kind of a guideline of what expected budget would look like. There is also, lastly, the letter of intent, which is just for new projects. So that form must be completed by new projects. That letter of intent form. Renewal projects do not need to complete a letter of intent form. All right, talk a little bit about the timelines. Some very high level details here. The major deadlines. So the letter of intent is due Monday, August 26th. The local application is due Monday, September 16th, and the posting of the preliminary priority list will be Friday, October 4th. There's some additional resources from HUD. So you can link to the HUD CoCNOFO. There's HUD.gov. NAEH, which is a National Alliance to End Homelessness, also has some really great tools on their website to learn a little bit about what's different in this NOFO. And of course, SSF's NOFO website is a go-to place for additional details. We're going to be hosting office hours twice a week starting this Friday from 9:30 to 10:30 a.m. every Friday, and Tuesday 1:30 to 2:30 p.m. Every Tuesday. The link to those Zooms is on our website. So if you have any questions, we will be in there, be able to answer any questions that you have and get you some help. So contact information, if you have questions about the local competition or anything like that, that can go to CoCNOFO@sacstepsforward.org. If you have specific questions about the NOFO that you would like to ask HUD, that is their website or their address, CoCNOFO@HUD.gov. If you need help with eSnaps from kind of the HUD end, you lose your password, need to reset your password, something isn't working, you can email eSnaps@HUD.gov. All right, so we wanted to pause here and leave plenty of time for questions and answers. And so, yeah, we will post those in the chat. If you want to raise your hand, we can do that as well. I know there's lots of new changes this year, so happy to answer those questions. And if we can have them ideally in the chat for all, because I imagine that if one person has a question, they'll be asked, I imagine others will as well. So it'd be helpful if we can have that in the chat for all. Yes, David.
Yeah, I had a question about, in reviewing the rank, we talked about like utilization. So we had discussions regarding if there were certain things that were out of our control. Like for instance, we had some units that were basically taken offline because someone passed away and the coroner sealed off the units for a huge amount of time. And we actually had in this application, we had, I think, 4 units that during the timeline actually were offline for a period of time, which then of course affected our utilization rate, and utilization rate does carry quite a number of points. So I know there was discussion about if there was something that was completely out of our control for an amount of time, then instead of a narrative explaining what had happened, that there was some way of actually taking those units offline so they didn't even figure into the calculation of units for utilization rate. Is that something that is going to be in this round, or do we have any more information with that, or is it something that I just misunderstood?
I think there are 2 ways that we can address that. One is when you are looking at your APRs, as those are issued and you're calculating your APRs, you can make that case during the APR calculation. And on the back end, to your point, there is also an area in the application itself where you can give a narrative as to the adjustment, so that if there is anything that we're not able to resolve through the correction of APRs, that we can certainly resolve it through the narrative itself. So hopefully some checks and balances on either side.
Gotcha. All right, that's helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, and David, I put a piece of the scoring criteria in the chat as well. So leased up to units not available due to circumstances outside of provider control. Other circumstances will also be considered and evaluated based on merit.
Gotcha.
So please
Perfect. Thank you so
include
much.
that detail in your application.
All right, that sounds good.
Carol?
my understanding that SSF is going to be in touch with agencies regarding the issue of bed versus unit utilization. What's the timeline on that?
So the PRC had decided that all projects will use by units. And then they can make the individual case if they would like to use beds, but as a standard, all units or all projects will use units as the factor.
I'm sure I was in that meeting and I just forgot. Thanks.
Yep.
Hi, Jesse. Deanna has asked, will renewing agencies automatically be scheduled with an SSF coordinator for the application process, or do we need to request that outside of upcoming office hours?
That's a good question, Rachel. Do you know the process on that?
Yeah, renewing agencies will not automatically be scheduled with an SSF coordinator to address your specific application processes. They will be automatically scheduled to address your APRs. So that's if you have like application specific questions, you can schedule those directly with the SSF team, or you can attend upcoming office hours.
Thank you, Rachel.
Um,
If that doesn't answer your question, please feel free to raise your hand or ask another question in the chat. In the meantime, Cynthia has asked, what is the expected time for responses to questions submitted to CoCNOFO at sacsteps4.org? So what's the usual turnaround time for responses for questions submitted to that email inbox?
Yeah, Cynthia, I anticipate that we can get to any email within 24 hours. Now, whether or not we get you the final response in that 24 hours is a kind of a case-by-case basis, but we do hope to respond to you as soon as we possibly can and acknowledge receipt of your email.
Thank you, Rachel.
And I got two questions in direct message. One is, would we like to provide we would like to provide more RH units and supportive services for the housing program. Would it be better to adjust our previous project or prepare a new project in addition to the existing one? I don't know, that might be kind of program specific. That might be something you want to dive in directly, kind of more on a one-on-one basis. I don't know if I have an answer for that at this moment.
Yeah, I would say it does depend on the performance of the project. And so you'd want to look at your project performance and make sure that you have a good chance of being awarded either as a renewal or a new project. But if you have specific questions, please reach out to the team and we can discuss kind of what that might look like.
Yeah, and then question two, if we need to prepare a new project, should we submit both the old and new projects under the same agency? Yes. You can do a renewal and a new project at the same time.
We have a question from Kate Hutchinson. She says, this may be coming up, but can you provide more detail on how we will address the community standards?
The community standards checklist is a self-assessment tool. And is not being scored. So that is up to the agencies on doing that self-assessment. We are asking that they complete it and send it back as their application, but it is not part of review and rank, or will it be scored? This is our first year having this, so we want it to be pretty light touch and just an opportunity to really kind of think internally about meeting those standards.
Thank you, Jesse.
Mm-hmm.
We have another question from Maria who says, I had a Section 8 voucher that expired before I could find a place. Is this meeting? Okay, so I apologize. I think this was for a different meeting, so I'll respond to that directly. Maria, I think that's for a different meeting, but I will message you some resources. Thank you. We have another one that asks if there will be a list of events that are mandatory to attend for renewal applicants for question 7A on the renewal scoring tool.
Let me double check what 7A is. Let's see. So that's success and participation in CoC activities as measured based on the agency's attendance, participation, and leadership at CoC events and meetings and committees. So in terms of mandatory events, this is the only one that is specifically mandatory, correct, Rachel?
Yes, this
and
is the
then-
one that's mandatory for the year. The detail here is if you participated in at least 4 voluntary events over the course of the year, or if the agency led at least one successful event, training, or initiative over the course of the year, which involves participation of CoC agencies. So those, examples of that could include, attending, which Cynthia, remember you were there at the CoC annual meeting last year, or if you participated in the mandatory, we typically have 2 mandatory trainings for the CoC. One is for DV or domestic violence, and the other is for fair housing. So those are just some examples that you could use for that element.
Yeah, and Cynthia 7B, right after 7A is about the mandatory trainings. It is 2 points for regular attendance at those trainings.
Thank you, Jesse and Rachel. I have another question asking if or mentioning that there was a discussion about each organization resubmitting threshold standards and asking, will this be a requirement for this year?
Sorry, can you repeat the
Yeah.
question, Sarah?
So she's asking if there will be a requirement this year for each organization resubmitting threshold standards.
So the threshold standards are a part we've incorporated into the application this year. So you will not be able to access the application because of skip logic and the actual format of the survey unless you get through the threshold criteria. So this year it's incorporated into the application.
Thank you. And then Abby asked if this we posted to the SSF website. Abby and everyone else, yes, this will be posted to the SSF website at the 2024 NOFO webpage, which has been shared about in this chat, and we'll share again before the meeting ends. Thank you. Cynthia asks, will there be instructions on how to fill out the renewal project application form? And is it more user-friendly than last year's application?
Hi, Cynthia. So it's going to be through SurveyMonkey. So we're hoping that it is more user-friendly than Smart Sheets that we used last year.
And Maria, I see your question in the chat, and I'm gonna ask Sarah to connect you not only with resources, but somebody who can answer your question after this meeting.
Yes, I'll message you directly, Maria. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Do we have any other questions? Did we miss a question? I know there was a lot of activity in the chat. Was your question missed? Any folks want to come off mute and raise their hand and ask any questions?
I did. Hi, Mr. Jesse. Okay, so don't be mad, but I don't know if I was supposed to attend this training because I'm lost. So I'm gonna send you and Miss Rachel an email. I just want to make sure I'm in the right place.
Okay, can do. Sounds good.
Thank you.
This is Wendy. I wanted a confirmation and making sure I understood. So we're not using Presto, but a Survey Monkey to do the supplemental questions?
Yeah, so Presto was actually property of Homebase, so we aren't able to use that anymore.
This is Cynthia with Next Move. Will there be the deadlines be updated on the website only in regards to when things should be submitted for
Yes.
the applications?
Yep. We're hoping to have everything finalized on the website by end of day tomorrow. Yes, Kathy? Kathy, you have your hand raised up. I also see a question in the chat and I can respond to that if that's easier.
And
Sure,
Kathy,
that'd be
when Kathy answers, do me a favor, Kathy, will you contact me after this is over? I've been trying to reach you. Thank you, dear.
Hi, David.
Bye.
Thank you, Jess. Yes, be great to know. Assuming if the application gets recommended for tier 1 funding, and then can you just remind us of the timeline for contracting period? I'm
Yeah,
assuming it's next year.
yeah, that one's always a little challenging with HUD. Often those contracts do take a long time to get started, and they're not always started at the same time. So it would be next year. It's typically in like the last half of the year. So it does take a while to process. But we can't really give any dates. It's a lot of it rides on HUD.
Addressing two of the questions in the chat right now regarding the purpose of this meeting and who should attend. Just as a context building, this meeting is specifically for providers of services who are applying for funds or renewing an application through the CoC program competition. And so this is not a meeting for specifically addressing needs of individuals who need housing or assistance. If you do need housing or homelessness assistance, please call 211 and press 8 for those services. And thank you for bringing up those questions in the chat. I'll put that number in the chat as well for 211.
And I see Becky's question. Did I understand correctly that high-performing renewals will not need to submit supplemental questions? Yes, that is correct. And we're looking to notify people of that by end of day tomorrow. Troy, I see your question about APR data cleanup. An email, again, by end of day tomorrow will be sent out to renewals.
But just as an early indicator, Troy, we're this year asking that providers pull their APR, and there's a process that we've included to be able to pull your own APR, run that APR, complete an independent review to ensure data is accurate and complete. And we're looking for that within the next week. So due within the next week so that we can get those APRs cleaned up, and that will help us populate your application on the back end.
Janet, is this a meeting or a Q&A? We have moved into the Q&A part of this meeting. Chrisinda, this is specifically for agencies. Someone will follow up with you with some resources. Wait, the chat is moving. Am I missing anything?
Kamara, what is a NOFO opportunity? The Notice of Funding Opportunity is what NOFO stands for, and this is an annual funding opportunity that's issued by the Department of Housing and Urban Development that helps fund housing projects in continuums of care. And our continuum of care is the Sacramento City and County and the providers that make up that system. So this is their opportunity to submit for new funding requests or renew funding requests that have been previously funded in years prior to this.
Okay, so it's an opportunity to get funded for housing, but you have to renew your application or make a new application for the NOFO opportunity.
Yes, but that's specific to providers. It's not
Oh,
specific to individual people.
okay, understand. Thank you.
No, thank you.
Thank you. So there's several questions in the chat. The first is, for first-time companies who are applying, where can we find the fund match?
That is a good question.
So the CFR, and I'm not going to remember the exact number right now, but I can if I can look for it, I'll put it in the chat. But the match is 25%, and you should be also aligning with the match requirements and making sure that the match is eligible. So I can find that and either add it to the Q&A, or if I can find it by the end of our time together, stick it in the chat.
Thank you, Rachel.
Generally, match also comes in two, either cash or in kind.
Thank you, Jesse.
Mhm.
And the next question is, if important information is discussed during the office hours, will that be elevated to other applicants who couldn't make the office hours?
Any questions that we answer during office hours will be added to the Q&A document.
Thank you, Jesse. One last question from Abby Gray. She asks, is there any indication from HUD on when award letters will be released?
Not to my knowledge. I don't know, Rachel, if you have any more information on that.
No, I don't. And you're saying, Abby, for award letters for the 2024-2025 NOFO opportunity?
Okay, let's see.
Got
In the
it.
chat, she says yes, it would be for the upcoming competitive process.
Yeah, I don't have that indication yet, but as soon as I do, I'll make sure that that's added to the Q&A.
Thank you. For Brian or anyone else who's wondering this, Brian asked, is there a way we can get the slides sent out? They will be available on the 2024 NOFO page that we have shared the link for, and I'll share the link for one more time before the meeting ends. We have a question also on where one can find a sponsoring agency for those with their first time developing.
You can reach out to the CoCNOFO email, and we'll get you in contact with someone from SSF if that's a direction you want to explore. If not, you can also find community partners in Sacramento to do that as well.
Thank you, Jesse. For
I
why do
see Karina's hand up.
I apologize. Thank you, Karina.
Hi, so we have a project that would be considered a renewal project, but it's not leased up yet. So we won't have any APRs to use for the scoring.
Is it less than 18 months in operation?
No, so it's not technically in operation yet. It's still in construction.
Okay.
It'll be
So
done,
then if it's less than 18 months operation, you won't be required to be scored based on APRs.
Oh, okay. Is there a different like application for projects like that?
No, it's the same application, but the supplemental questions are not required. So the threshold criteria is still required, but the supplemental questions are not.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Rachel, and thank you, Karina. I have a question from Bridget Alexander asking for YHDP funded agencies. I believe that there will be a different process. Where do we learn about that process?
Good question, Bridget. We're still waiting a little bit of guidance from HUD. We weren't expecting the YHDP programs to fold into the NOFO this year, so still waiting on additional information on that process and what that's going to look like.
Thank you, Jesse. We have a question from Abby Gray asking, can you please go over the requirements surrounding needing to submit supplemental questions?
Yeah, absolutely. So in our CoC rank or review and rank processes, which you can find posted on our website, there are two statuses that would preclude you from having to submit supplemental questions. The first is that if you have less than 18 months of operations. So if you have less than 18 months of operations, supplemental questions are not required. The other instance is if you are a high-performing renewal project. If you have achieved a high-performing renewal project status, that means that you meet the threshold factors of the scoring of the renewal scoring tool and all of the performance metrics. And I can share that table with you, and you have to meet all of the following performance metrics. The first is about housing retention and placement. If you are a permanent supportive housing project, you must score 98% or higher in housing retention and placement, or no more than one negative household exit. And if you're a rapid rehousing project, above 80% or no more than one negative household exit. The second criteria is increasing or maintaining income. For permanent supportive housing projects, it is above 75%. For rapid rehousing projects, it's above 65%. The third is bed and unit utilization. In this case, for this year, because we've, as a community, moved forward with unit utilization, we'll be focusing in that area unless there is a special case, which means a 95% or greater utilization rate. And then the fourth factor is grant spend down, which requires a 95% spend down rate. So if you meet all four of those criteria, that project is automatically ranked in the top of tier 1 in alphabetical order by project name. And so those projects are not going to be scored within the rank and review process and will not be required to complete the supplemental questions for the local competition or participate in any potential interviews that would happen during the rank and review process. So we as facilitators of this competition, we will assess if each renewal project has met those criteria, and we will do that within the next 24 hours to alert folks if we believe that you have a project that does meet those criteria.
I had a question. Can you repeat the second criteria?
Yes. Second criteria is increase or maintain income. For permanent supportive housing projects, that should be greater than 75%. And for rapid rehousing projects, should be greater than 65%.
Thank you.
No problem. Go ahead, Wendy.
Thank you. I'm on your website, and apologies if you already addressed this. Was there a document that provides like due dates of things? So, you know, the threshold documents, when is that due, and where do we need to submit? You know, you just talked about the APR that we needed to finalize that within a week. And I was just looking at specific dates, just to ensure that we comply.
Yeah, absolutely. Are you with a renewal project, Wendy?
It's definitely a renewal, and we may have a new project as well.
Okay, great. So right now, the details and dates that we have on our website are specific to this this registration for the workshop, and then also the consolidated application due date. The due dates that we shared today and the timeline for the letter of intent for new projects due Monday, the 26th. The local application due date of Monday, September 16th. And the posting of our preliminary priority list, which will be Friday, October 4th, should be updated within 24 hours of this webinar. The other things that you will see updated on that website are under the materials and resources tab, and that will be the renewal project application form and the new project application form. So all of that information will be updated within 24 hours of this webinar.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. Any other questions? Lots of information coming through the chat for everyone. Go ahead, Wendy.
Just sorry, I don't want to get ahead of myself, but I was wondering whether part of your agenda was to look at the Survey Monkey and questions.
No, that is not part of our agenda today.
And so, oh, go ahead.
I would say it will be posted tomorrow on our website, and if you would like to review it and then bring any questions that you have to our Friday or Tuesday office hours, that would be a great opportunity.
Okay, so the link to the Survey Monkey for both renewal and new will be available tomorrow. Okay.
That's correct. And Wendy, also encourage you, if you'd like to, set up a one-on-one so that we can go over any of that, we're more than happy to do that.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Oh.
Let's see. I'm going to answer Abby's question in the chat first, and then I'll go to David. Abby said, out of curiosity, what's defined as a negative exit? So negative exits are defined as exits, for instance, as a return to homelessness. That is defined as a negative exit. We've also defined negative exits as a termination from a program. Returns to institutions have also been defined as a negative exit. And I can get you, make sure I put that in the question and answer as well, the definition for negative exits, so that we have that to refer to. And if you would like to schedule a one-on-one, please email CoCNOFO@sacstepsforward.org, and we can arrange that. All right, David, you're up next.
Okay, when you say that the Survey Monkey will be available tomorrow, do you mean that the actual supplemental questions will be up tomorrow on the Survey Monkey? So we could,
Correct.
if we have a feeling, I mean, I know you'll notify, so I would assume that the notification will come out at the same time the monkey does, to say that you're not a high scoring functioning whatever program, and you'll have to complete the supplement. We can get started on those. But
Yes.
again, I kind of go back to the question about utilization, because if there was a way to take those units offline, then I believe that we would be scoring high enough to meet that, right? Does that make sense, to meet that criteria?
Yes.
So it's one of those things where I kind of,
Yeah.
and what is how long will we have to complete the supplemental questions until the due date of the
Until
16th?
September 16th.
Okay, so we have, do you know roughly how many questions there are? Is it gonna be another one of those question one with 15 parts to it, like we had that one year?
Let me see.
I take it you've seen the questions, correct?
I have. I didn't count all of them.
Yeah.
Let me check. Well, I'll check and I'll stick that in the chat for you, David.
Okay,
But
yeah,
if there are, as a part of our analysis for who we believe is going to be a high-performing project, we also looked at historical performance. And so if
Yeah.
there is like a disconnect between the historical performance and the scores this year, we want to take the
Yeah.
opportunity to have that conversation.
Oh, perfect. That'd be great. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Jesse, if you can take another question, I'm gonna count the
Okay.
the
I was
questions.
gonna say, we turned off the question counter because it was confusing, so I don't know if it'll handle that. But yeah, let me jump into the chat here. Okay, let's see. David, we got your question, and we're working on that. Wendy?
Yes, I find it very useful that you're all recording this workshop. When you do the office hours, will you also be recording it, as well too?
Yes. It'll be
Awesome,
posted as well.
awesome, thank you.
Let me jump into the chat real quick.
Kamara asks, applications for new or interim applicants can fill out will be uploaded tomorrow. When can I find out award letter from Project HUD or Section 8? I believe that's asking when the award announcements will be made, but Kamara, please feel free to follow up if that's incorrect, or raise your hand and clarify verbally.
Yeah, if some clarification on that question, I think would be helpful for us to answer.
Yeah, I was just interested in knowing, like, I know that we have to complete application for renewing a 2-year process of Sacramento Steps Forward. So I just wanted to know, like, what would be the next steps in hearing back of, like, potentially getting housed, maybe?
So this process that we're discussing is for agencies to receive funding to do the housing services. So this is an application for Section 8 or HUD specific program. It's for the agencies to receive funds to offer those programs.
Okay. All right. That makes sense. Thank you.
Any other questions in the chat that we missed? I was rolling pretty quick there for a moment. Yes, go ahead.
Thanks. Thanks, Jesse. I'm trying to purchase a 42 unit hotel in the Sacramento area and convert into apartment complexes. So I sent in the LOI, and I'm quite sure I did the application. So now it's just a waiting process. How will I know when the process go through to know if I was selected or not?
I'm wondering if you maybe submitted the wrong application, because our application is being posted tomorrow.
Okay, you mean I submitted too early?
No one should have access to our application at this point. So if you want to send me what you submitted or what
Well, I gotta ask my wife, but I know that's why I'm on this call, because she couldn't make it on the call. So, me and her is with a nonprofit organization.
Got it. Okay.
But I know she definitely sent in the LOI. She told me sent in the LOI and she sent an application. So, but if we have to send an application in tomorrow, where do we go to get the application?
It's going to be on our website, and our LOI wasn't available until today. So I'm guessing that you might be in the wrong meeting.
I'm wondering, perhaps you submitted a letter of intent for the CoCBuilds NOFO.
Oh, that might be it.
Okay, well, I know when she did it, though, they said we had to attend. This was a mandatory meeting. So where are you saying that we're supposed to be doing the LOI tomorrow and the application? Where do I go?
So there, and we're gonna talk about this after our question section.
Okay.
But there are 2 different NOFOs that are concurrent at the moment. One is the NOFO that we're talking about today, which is the CoC, the 2024 to 2025 CoC program competition. And that's a NOFO that does renewal and new funding for rapid rehousing, transitional housing, permanent supportive housing projects, HMIS, coordinated entry, etc., what you've heard about today. The other NOFO that is concurrently running that we released a letter of interest for on Friday of last week is the CoCBuilds notice of funding opportunity. That is separate, however concurrent, just in terms of like happening at the same time, but a separate process from this NOFO. And the CoCBuilds grant specifically focuses on the acquisition, construction, and rehabilitation of permanent supportive housing units, which we'll talk about at the end of our question session today. So if that is what you are looking for or that you have applied to, those letters of intent, since you've submitted it, those letters of intent will be reviewed later this month.
Okay, and yes, I was doing it for the acquisition. The acquisition is if you
Perfect.
purchasing, correct? Yeah.
Yes, yes, that's
Okay.
perfect.
Well,
Okay, so the CoC 24-25 program competition, where do we apply that at? What website?
it
So
was just,
that would be through the links that we've provided today on Sacramento Steps Forward's website. And again, they are two separate processes.
And is that I'm looking for it now. I know you put a lot of them in here. Is that the one, the 225 NOFO, that one? Is it on there?
Yes.
Sacramento Forward. Okay,
That's
that's
correct.
one of them. Okay, got it. Okay.
I also wanted to put in the chat the eligible activities for the 24-25 NOFO. Just so we could be clear that construction is not an eligible cost for the 24-25 NOFO.
Construction, got it.
But it is correct for the builds, right? That's one of the big part of it.
Yes.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, let me go back. Let's see, and I to David's question earlier, there's less than 20 questions in both applications. So one is 20 and one is 19.
Thank you.
Let's see, the renewal project scoring tool, this is from Karina, on the website has draft in the title when downloaded. Where is the final draft? Let's take a look at that, Karina. What's posted on the website should be the final threshold factors.
Thank you. That's answered in the chat as well. The neural project scoring tool on the website is the final and completed draft. I apologize for any confusion with that link title when downloaded. Additionally, Ryan asked the question, will the recording of this meeting be posted and where? That was also answered in the chat with the link to the 2024 NOFO page.
Great, thank you.
Are there any additional questions or questions we've missed?
I have a quick question about the builds NOFO. Is there a mandatory webinar for that one as well?
There is not currently a mandatory webinar for the builds NOFO. We are going to talk about it at the end of our session today, but it is not mandatory. What is mandatory is the letter of interest.
Got it. Thank you.
Yes.
Okay, Rachel, Jesse, I believe we've answered all the questions if there's additional slides to cover.
Great, thank you.
This is the end of our CoC regular NOFO, and I'm going to pass it over to Rachel for the CoCBuilds NOFO, which I know is confusing.
Right, and that is, I want to be very, very clear about the CoCBuilds NOFO, that it is an entirely different notice of funding opportunity and an entirely different process from the CoC program competition. So if you are interested in the CoCBuilds NOFO, we are asking you to engage in a separate process. HUD did it a little bit differently than the regular CoC NOFO process. And everything from the kind of grant requirements and some of those formats all the way through to the application portal are different and separate, which is why the CoC and Sacramento Steps Forward as the lead applicant has decided to go with a separate process. So let me start out with an overview of the CoCBuilds NOFO. There is a total available fund of $175 million for permanent supportive housing units. And this notice of funding opportunity addresses homelessness by increasing permanent supportive housing units through new construction, acquisition, or rehabilitation. There are 3 key priorities within this funding schema. At least 70% of funding should be for construction, acquisition, and rehabilitation. 20% should focus on supportive services and operating costs, and 10% should focus on project administration. Now, we've noted that there is a set aside specific to both rural communities as well as tribal communities. And so we believe, based on our analysis, that there's around $80 million of that $175 million that will be eligible for our use without being a rural community, or if we are not engaged with a tribal community in putting forth those funds. The maximum award amount for these funds is $10 million per project, and the minimum award amount is $1 million per project. So just important thresholds to be aware of, as well as thinking about the likelihood of funding and the type of application that has the best opportunity for funding. Now, the CoC is only allowed to submit 1 project. So the process that many of you may be familiar with already, that we initiated last week, was really focused on getting letters of intent from agencies that are interested in putting forth a worthy project with scoring criteria or threshold criteria, eligibility criteria, so that we can make sure that going into this, we have selected projects that we believe will be the best fit. There are several funding priorities within this NOFO, as you'll see on the screen. The first is to increase housing opportunities for people with high-risk levels of need. The second is increasing the supply of permanent supportive housing units within the CoC or geographic region, specifically to address individuals and families experiencing homelessness where one member of the household has a disability. So there is a focus on people with disabilities as a part of this funding priority. They also encourage the coordination between housing providers, healthcare organizations, and social service providers. The fourth priority is to ensure access to resources for projects to expand opportunities for new PSH units or permanent supportive housing units in states with populations of less than 2.5 million. That is the rural set aside that I referred to. Ensuring that new permanent supportive housing units are conveniently located near local services, walking distance, near reliable transportation, and provide access to telehealth. And then the sixth element of those priorities is affirmatively furthering fair housing by addressing barriers which perpetuate segregation, hinder access to areas of opportunity for protected class groups, and concentrate affordable housing in under-resourced areas. So there is a strategic alignment specifically with some of the affirmatively furthering fair housing and elements as well for racial equity, a strategic fit with regional priorities like our regionally coordinated homelessness action plan. There's also a acknowledgement of leveraging funds, which encourages collaboration and a maximization of HUD's investment. And again, the element of racial equity and advancing racial equity, which requires a mandatory analysis and strategies to address barriers. So as I commented earlier, our approach is that on August 14th, we met with the CoC board and provided a presentation for our approach for addressing this notice of funding opportunity for CoCBuilds. On the 16th, we requested letters of interest via email. If you have not received a letter request for a letter of interest, please do email the CoCNOFO at sacstepsforward.org email address, and we will make sure that that gets to you. Submissions for letters of interest are being accepted this week from August 19th through the 23rd. On the 26th, Sacramento Steps Forward will review letters of interest received through this process. Then on August 28th, we will go through that decision-making process and analysis using the scoring criteria from HUD guidance, as well as the eligibility criteria in order to guide those decision-making processes. Then we will submit a summary report and recommendations to the CoC board. And should we choose to move forward with worthy projects, which I do expect we will host a mandatory bidders conference for the CoCBuilds NOFO on September 17th, 2024. So that is our process moving forward for the CoCBuilds grant. And the CoCBuilds grant is due November 21st of this year. So just about a month after the CoC program NOFO is due. And just as a reference, we did present this to the CoC board meeting, or in the CoC board meeting on August 14th. That meeting was recorded and posted to our website. If you would like to go back through the full presentation on the CoCBuilds NOFO and our approach to that, to the response to the CoC NOFO. There is also a memo that comprehensively reviews and analyzes the opportunity along with the scoring criteria for your reference and the threshold eligibility requirements. But I'll pause now to see if there are any additional questions specific to the CoCBuilds notice of funding opportunity.
Yeah, we have
Alright.
two raised hands. Annette, I believe you were first. Feel free to go ahead and ask.
And Annette, if you're talking, you're on mute.
Oh, I'm sorry, Rachel. No, I didn't know you said me first. I forgot.
Oh yeah,
My wife's name is up there, but I'm Jeff. Yes. Hey, so that's what I filled out. what you just spoke on,
Perfect.
that's what I filled out, both of them.
Good. Oh, I'm so glad. I can't
Okay,
wait to review it.
okay, so that was right. So what you're talking about tomorrow is something different, correct? The application for tomorrow is something different.
Yes, something completely different. That's exactly right.
Okay, and is that still pertaining to, though, as far as if you are trying to create housing for the homeless or Section 8?
Yes, there is still an element of that if you're interested in submitting a new project for the CoC program competition.
Okay, it could be a different project, not the same one I just applied for?
Correct. Yep.
Okay, okay. Thanks, Rachel.
You're very welcome. All right, go ahead, Kathy.
Hi there. I put the message in the chat, but what if the property is half in Yolo County and half in Sacramento County?
If it's half in Yolo County and half in Sacramento County, the opportunity could fund the half that's in Sacramento County.
Okay, we'll take the questions offline.
Sure.
Thank you.
We also have a question from Brian in the chat who says that we have a potential project and the total project is about 50 to 70 million. Can we put on an application in for 10 million CoCBuilds fund as part of the project?
Absolutely. And it's even better if you have, you know, some of that work started, or you're, you know, in ownership of property. That sort of thing is even better. So if it is a part of a larger project and this helps supplement that, I think that is exactly what HUD indicated that they were looking for in a grant like this. You know, and especially with you know, that maximum threshold being at 10 million. I understand that in the development world can be a slice of the pie, but not necessarily the whole pie.
I'll go. I think maybe I'm up next.
Yeah, go for it.
Hi, Rachel.
Thanks, Rachel.
I just wanna check.
Transitional housing for veterans program would be eligible.
I don't know what that was. Rachel, I was just curious, what kind of information are you all looking for in the LOIs due at the end of this week?
So the LOI that's due at the end of the week is requesting, and let me just see if I can get to that, to my summary really quickly, so that I can share it kind of verbatim. Pardon my hopefully quick delay. Okay, so for the letter of interest, we are asking for your organization, or we're asking you to upload your organization's letter of interest addressed to Sacramento Steps Forward on your organization's letterhead. The letter of interest should include your organization name and contact information, a brief description of the proposed project, which includes the type and number of permanent supportive housing units to be created, a list of all of the partners in the project, including their roles and detailing the project's ownership structure, as well detailing whether you have a healthcare partner, included in the proposed project, your estimated total budget and funding request, including the estimated allocations for construction, acquisition, or rehabilitation of new PSH units, other eligible CoC program activities associated with the PSH project, like supportive services or operating costs, and project administration. And you should also include whether the project is reliant on additional funding and a description of your source of match, because there is also match required for this opportunity to the same level, 25% in kind or cash. The LOI should also include a description of the organization's experience with other projects that have a similar scope and scale as the proposed project. So new construction, acquisition, or rehabilitation. a description of your organization's experience and resources promoting racial equity, particularly in Black and Brown communities, an explanation of how the project aligns with HUD's strategic goals, such as increasing housing opportunities for people with high level of need and affirmatively furthering fair housing, and an explanation of how the project aligns with the strategic goals of the Regionally Coordinated Homelessness Action Plan. Then we request signatory information with the name, title, and signature of the authorized representative for your organization. And we're asking that be uploaded through the survey request. It's another SurveyMonkey form as a PDF.
Okay, cool, great, thank you. And is all that information is in one of the emails or something that's out there?
It sure is.
Okay, you probably sent it to me, so I'll go in and dig it up. Thank you.
Perfect.
I apologize, my internet went out for just a moment, so I'm not sure if this question was answered, but Jill Fox had asked to confirm if a GPD transitional housing for veterans program would not be eligible.
Jill, can you give me a little bit more detail about the program? And this is
Certainly.
specific to CoCBuilds, correct?
Right, yes. It's right now we operate out of Mather, 80 units for GPD grant and per diem, and we have a capital grant that we just received to do rehabilitation of a hotel, but it's transitional housing and it's not PSH.
Correct.
So
Yeah,
that's why I'm
correct.
saying I don't think it will qualify.
That is correct. It should
Okay.
be permanent supportive housing units.
Got
Yep.
it. Okay.
Thanks.
Shucks. I thought I had an out. I had another opportunity for some additional funding, but thank you though.
No problem. Thank you. Let's see. Kathy, do you have another question?
No, I'll take my hand down.
Oh, okay. How about Karina?
And I just wanted to confirm that it's okay if the project is already underway.
It is okay. Yes.
Great, thank you.
And the project timeline is from, let me pull that up really quickly. It's a 60-month timeline, so quite a long range. But the estimated project start date would be 10/1/2025, and the project end date 10/1/2030. So if your project will be completed within that timeline, then it's eligible.
Perfect, thank you.
Thank you. We also have a question in the chat asking if the 25% matching grant is required.
Correct. Yes.
Thank you. And then we have a question from Lauren Anderson. She said, I'm sure you have already said this, but when is the LOI due?
The letter of interest is due this Friday, August 23rd.
Thank you, Rachel. Aneth, do you have another question?
Yeah. So with this here, if I'm trying to purchase a property, how does this project thing go when you're saying it starts October 2025? The project might not even be available then. How does that work?
Yeah, that you would have to make sure that your construction timeline and your acquisition timeline lines up with that 60-month window because of the anticipated project start date. So typically, and considering the maximum amount, I do think that HUD is specifically looking for projects that are already underway that this can provide supplemental assistance to, rather than a project that would need to get off the ground utilizing these funds as the only source of capital to move it forward.
Okay, but I thought these funds was to purchase.
It can be, yes.
Right, right.
So as long as the purchase happens within that window, you're good to go.
Oh, October 1st, 2025?
Yes.
To October 1st, 2030?
Yes.
Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
I believe we've answered all the questions currently pending in the chat. If your question was missed or if you have an additional question, please add it to the chat now or raise your hand. I'm not seeing any additional questions. Rachel or Jesse, do you have anything, any final remarks, reminders you'd like to share?
Just a note to say thank you for being so deeply engaged in the work that we all do in this community to help solve homelessness and serve people experiencing homelessness or at risk of experiencing homelessness in our community. We know that homelessness is solvable, and it's solvable because of you. And so we thank you very much for your engagement.
And I'll just add, please ask questions, email us, come to our office hours. We are here to help you through this process. If something doesn't make sense, if you have any sort of question, please do reach out. We don't want you all to struggle on your own. We're happy to help.